whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei, a Dilworth chaplain that unleashed hell on the schoolboys he abused is jailed. And today the survivors got to tell their stories. The details are sobering: broken marriages, drug addiction and a lifetime of torment for some. It's V-Day. If you want to be fully vaccinated by Christmas, you need to get the first shot today. There's still time. You'll also have to be double dosed to use dock huts and campsites. And a warning, expect a stink time if you are unvaxxed and heading north for the holidays. Stand by for an announcement on the Rhythm and Vines Music Festival, and we've got a super cute pharmacy kitten called Kevin offering cuddles in exchange for COVID jabs. Don't forget, you can watch us on Sky Channel 83.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. No mai, haere mai. Good afternoon. I'm Karen McCarthy. 8 victims of a serial Auckland school paedophile have looked him in the eye and told him the effect his abuse had on them. Ross Douglas Brown was today sentenced to 6.5 years in jail for sexually assaulting 14 boys over 15 years at Dilworth School. During the former school chaplain's sentencing, many spoke of the effect the abuse has had on them. They include broken marriages, drug addiction, jail time and mental health problems. One said his offending has totally changed his life and his character.
The abuse has led to my life being impacted to the point I don't parent my sons. I have no one to trust, and though I don't want to kill myself, I feel I'd sooner not wake up in the morning. I am now an angry person.
Justice Toogood said Brown's offending was calculated and predatory. The police and iwi will set up checkpoints in Northland after December the 15th, when the border around Auckland reopens and people can travel again. Commissioner Andrew Costa says police are working with iwi to ensure visitors are welcomed after the boundaries open and vulnerable communities are protected. Aucklanders and others travelling north will be checked. Travellers need to be double vaccinated or test negative for COVID-19 within 72 hours before departure. The country moves into the traffic light system at midnight tonight. Nelson Marlborough, DHB's Chief Medical Officer, says it's too early to say how large the latest COVID-19 outbreak in the region will end up. The number of new cases has jumped by 9 to 14 active ones. The cases are made up of 2 clusters. Nick Baker says finding the link is important and may take some time.
We don't know with the cases we've seen in the 2 small clusters whether we're close to the point at which COVID entered our community or whether we're distant. And that will go a long way to determine the number of cases we get over the coming days and weeks.
172 new cases have been reported nationally today, including 142 in Auckland and 15 in Waikato. Only fully vaccinated trampers will be able to stay in Department of Conservation huts and campsites from the 15th of December. DOC says visitors will need to confirm all of their party is fully vaccinated when booking. Tess Brunton reports.
People who are not fully vaccinated can still use tracks and most DOC toilets, but they cannot use DOC hut facilities or campsites. Anyone with bookings will be contacted to advise them that they need to be vaccinated or their booking needs to be cancelled. Hut wardens and camp hosts will check for vaccination status, and there will be spot checks at more remote huts and smaller campgrounds. DOC warns people should be prepared, as some higher risk sites may need to close at red or orange traffic light settings. A vaccination policy for staff is expected in the next fortnight.
The country's drug buying agency Pharmac has been slated in a new report. An independent panel looked at how the agency makes decisions and says its approach disadvantages Māori, Pacific, disabled people and those with rare disorders. It says decision-making is opaque and slow, and there may be an excessive focus on containing costs. The review also says there is a perception New Zealand is falling behind other countries. The American actor Alec Baldwin has given his first interview since a gun he was holding on set went off, killing cinematographer Helena Hutchins. He was emotional in the interview with the United States ABC network as he recalled the 42-year-old as someone who was loved by everyone. Other comments he made have raised more questions about the October incident.
Well, I didn't pull the trigger.
So you never pulled the trigger?
No. I would never point a gun at anyone and pull a trigger at them, never.
What did you think happened? How did a real bullet get on that set?
I have no idea. Someone put a live bullet in a gun, a bullet that wasn't even supposed to be on the property.
The police are still investigating. In sport, the Women's Tennis Association founder Billie Jean King says the organisation is on the right side of history after suspending tournaments in China over the treatment of player Peng Shuai. The WTA chief executive Steve Simon has cited concerns over the former doubles world number one after she posted a message on social media alleging that a leading Chinese politician had sexually assaulted her. King says the stand shows why women's tennis is the leader in women's sports. Meanwhile, former New Zealand tennis player Brenda Perry, who was one of the tournament directors for China's Wuhan Open, says the suspension of the events doesn't have a time frame.
I think it'll be interesting to see, so what happens if tennis leaves China? Will it bring about change? Would it bring about more change if it stayed? Those are unknown questions.
Alex Carey will be Australia's wicketkeeper for the first two Ashes tests, replacing former captain Tim Payne, who's taken a mental health break after a sexting scandal. The 30-year-old will make his test debut in next Wednesday's Ashes opener in Brisbane, having represented Australia in 45 one-day internationals and 38 T20 matches. And there's been no change at the top of English football premiership, with leaders Chelsea beating Watford 2-1. Second-placed Manchester City beat Aston Villa 2-1, and third-placed Liverpool beat struggling Everton 4-1 in the Merseyside derby. That's the news.
Businesses gear up for traffic lights.
It's going to be the next few weeks that's going to determine how some of them may survive.
One Town's just got them.
It is an exciting day, and I guess this week is going to be talking about traffic signals a little bit different today.
And will this make your Christmas Carol playlist?
It's a little bit of a nerdier style of rap that's a bit lyrical, where we can kind of fit some of our message in.
Vaccine, just a little jab, don't worry, mate, it's not that bad.
That's a wrap. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
Checkpoint next after the short forecast from Met Service to midnight on Friday. For Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and isolated showers. Waikato to Whanganui, including Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, scattered showers, mainly during the afternoons and evenings. Some will be heavy. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, often cloudy with isolated showers for Gisborne. Manawatu to Wellington and Wairarapa, mainly fine today. Cloud about Wairarapa clearing, cloudy periods and scattered showers tomorrow. For Nelson, Bulla, Westland and Fiordland, cloud increasing, isolated showers turning to rain in Westland this evening and elsewhere overnight. Heavy falls in Westland tomorrow. Marlborough and Canterbury mostly cloudy today, scattered rain before dawn tomorrow, then fine spells, isolated afternoon and evening showers. Otago and Southland, cloudy periods and scattered showers. Thunderstorms are possible during the afternoons and evenings. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's 5:07.
Nā mihi Karen, tēnā koutou katoa no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Broken marriages, drug addiction, jail time and torment. Survivors have detailed the impact of sexual assault on them as schoolboys by a man they trusted, the former chaplain of Dilworth. Ross Douglas Brown sexually assaulted young boys over a 14-year period during his time at the school, which ended in 2002. Only in 2020 did his crimes catch up with him. And today he was sent to jail for 6.5 years. Now, just a warning, some listeners may find this story upsetting. John Bond was in court.
Ross Douglas Brown, face to face with those he'd sexually assaulted many years ago.
Must be feeling lucky there's so few charges. Got away with a lot, didn't you?
One by one, these men told him how they felt and did not hold back.
What a disgusting human you are. You are the lowest of the low, and you will forever be marked as a paedophile, the absolute scum of the earth.
Survivor after survivor spoke of the lifelong destructive effects of Brown's calculated offending.
The abuse has led to my life being impacted to the point I don't parent my sons. I have no one to trust, and though I don't want to kill myself, I feel I'd sooner not wake up in the morning. I am now an angry person.
Others who didn't want to be recorded said because of those traumatising formative experiences, they struggled to maintain healthy relationships. Marriages broke down, some ostracised themselves and pushed everyone who tried to love them away. Some of these men became addicted to drugs, in their words, to numb the pain. Others started stealing or gambling, several spent time in jail, and one boy was admitted to hospital shortly after the offending.
He told his grandmother that he would rather die than continue at Dilworth, and fearful for him, she removed him from the school. Less than a year later, he was committed to a mental health facility in Starship Hospital, having self-harmed and being diagnosed with major depressive episodes with psychotic features.
Many of them were additionally vulnerable, according to Justice Toogood.
Most of the boys attending the school came from families with broken marriages or solo parents, or they were orphans or severely disadvantaged. Many were emotionally vulnerable.
Brown invited boys he thought were gay to a special after-school club he hosted, Justice Toogood said.
You targeted your victims and groomed them to create an environment of apparent normality in which to gratify your deviant sexual interest in boys.
Justice Toogood described the offending as premeditated and predatory. He thanked the men for bravely speaking up. He said no jail sentence could ever reflect the damage Brown has done, before sending the 73-year-old to jail for 6.5 years. One of the victims spoke outside after the sentencing.
6.5 years where so many people have suffered for a lifetime. It doesn't really balance, but hopefully it's long enough that he won't be able to offend against anyone else ever again.
He says the sentencing helped him close a chapter in his life.
For me, I guess it was about some closure, being able to say to him what he'd done and how it had affected me, and to, I guess, support others and be there for each other, you know. Shut him out, he's gone. And yeah, now we just work on our own lives. It still does affect me, but I'm working on it.
Brown was one of 11 Dilworth-linked men initially charged with historical sexual offending after a major investigation launched in 2020. 3 have now been sentenced after admitting what they did, with 1 more in January. 3 others have died since being charged, and 4 will go to trial next year.
It is 11 minutes past 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Kia ora, rā watu mō whakarangu mai. Haere ake nei, Minister and Te Tai Tokerau MP Kelvin Davis on why the government is sticking to its guns and letting unvaccinated people into Northland this summer. Nelson's COVID cases have swelled today and health officials are still trying to work out where they've come from. There are now 14 active cases in the area and another one will be officially added to tomorrow's figures. 2 schools in the city remain closed with cases linked to them. Andrew McRae reports.
Queues of cars have snaked around Nelson today as people rush out for a test with news COVID has arrived. The cases are made up of 2 clusters, with 11 in one and 3 in the other. A possible connection between the 2 is being investigated. Nelson Marlborough DHB's Chief Medical Officer, Nick Baker, says it's too early to say how large the latest outbreak will get.
We don't know with the cases we've seen in the 2 small clusters whether we're close to the point at which COVID entered our community or whether we're distant. And that will go a long way to determine the number of cases we get over the coming days and weeks.
He says numbers will increase.
This is something that we've been planning for. It's now time to activate all of our plans and fine-tune them. It's also very important that community knows to double down and keep taking all the precautions that will make life hard for COVID.
Chief Executive Lexi O'Shea says the DHB's been planning for such an outbreak for some time and is ready.
Our hospitals are on standby and we continue to fine-tune our plans. This is something we've done before. In 2020 we had an outbreak. However, this time all our health workers are vaccinated. This time our community is vaccinated. And this time we're applying the learnings from last time.
Dr Baker says it's too early for genomic sequencing results to be back from the 2 clusters.
We do not have a clarity as to exactly how the virus got into our community. And in a way, that's not a surprise in that as we see more COVID spreading across New Zealand, there will be more opportunities for it to move from place to place. And we will get more cases emerging, just like we're seeing here.
He says residents shouldn't get too despondent about the outbreak.
If you look at the way this took off in Northland, Waikato, Bay of Plenty, it's not uncommon to get these sorts of numbers early on. The numbers we're getting reflect spread before people knew they had COVID. So now in the future, people will be earlier to pick up they've got COVID and infect smaller numbers of people.
Dr Baker says the region is vastly better prepared than last year by having high vaccination rates. 92% have had their first dose and 85% a second.
A stink time is what unvaccinated holidaymakers can expect if they head to Northland this summer. That's according to Minister and Taitokoro MP Kelvin Davis. Iwi of the North say the unvaccinated are not welcome, and along with the region's DHBs, they're begging the government to ban people who aren't jabbed from heading north when the border opens. The region's only 77% fully vaccinated, with Māori only 64% double dosed. From December 15, fully vaccinated people and anyone who's returned a negative COVID test within 72 hours of travel can head wherever they like. But despite iwi concerns, Kelvin Davis is standing by the government's decision.
Well, unvaccinated visitors, if they head north, they'll have a pretty stink time of it because they won't be allowed into any businesses, cafes, motor camps, restaurants, bars. So my advice to them is to stay home, but vaccinated people most certainly are welcome.
Because iwi leaders up that way say unvaccinated visitors are not welcome at all. So why doesn't the government just say you're not wanted up there, only vaccinated people?
Well, we have said that, and that's why the police will be holding checkpoints to test, pull people over, and if they're not vaccinated and they're from Auckland, they risk getting a $1,000 fine.
They can go if they've had a COVID test within 72 hours of travel, so unvaccinated people are, under the rules, allowed to go and holiday in Northland. So are you happy with that position from the government? Because the iwi leaders are not.
Well, if they've had a test and they don't have COVID, well then we don't see any reason why they shouldn't go north. But of course, everyone has to take precautions if they're still wearing their masks and taking other precautions. We're hopeful that they can visit their family and relations and not take COVID with them. But again, the message is get vaccinated. People have had long enough. Everyone knows there's a global pandemic. Everyone knows the right thing to do is get vaccinated. So we just say get vaccinated.
So do you agree with the government's position then? 72 hours test is enough. Do you agree with that?
I agree with the position. We want people to be vaccinated, but if they are clear of COVID, then they can go. But, obviously we want them to get vaccinated as well.
Yeah, that's not foolproof though, is it? 72 hours in advance a test. And iwi leaders do not want unvaccinated visitors. So do what they think not matter?
Well, I've been meeting with iwi leaders for months now. We have meetings basically every week by Zoom. Also, iwi leaders not associated with the Iwi Leaders Forum, with Tamaki Makaurau. Iwi leaders, they've had unprecedented access to ministers, to CEs, to officials. We've tried to work through all their issues with them, but at the end of the day, Auckland has been in lockdown for 3 months, and people... what we've done with the traffic light system is made it so that people who are vaccinated have a number of freedoms, and those who are unvaccinated will have limited opportunities. And if they go north unvaccinated and they haven't had a test, they'll most likely be stopped and turned around and face a $1,000 fine.
Yeah, but the government set a benchmark, right? 90% double vaccination rate was what you set as the benchmark. And you're breaking your own rules now, because the vaccination rates in Northland, 77% are fully vaccinated, and if you look at Māori, it's just 64%. So why are you going back on your own target?
Because we actually have to learn to live with this as well. We just can't be locked down and put boundaries around everybody and think that...
they just want a bit more time, though, Minister. So will you give them some more time?
Well, we don't know how much time they're asking, and we just can't stay locked down for another, or separated from the rest of the country for another 6, 9, 12 months. We don't know how long it will take. These people who are resisting vaccinations and just downright saying no, we'll probably never get them over the line. So the rest of the country also has to be able to operate, and we've heard the stories about people whose mental health isn't the flashiest because of the lockdowns. Businesses are going under. So there's a whole number of things that we've considered, and we have to try and get a balance somewhere.
So currently Whanganui Hospital is at 98% capacity. They think that they could get around 50,000 visitors. Are you not worried about this at all? Because they are.
Yeah, of course I'm worried. I mean, I've got elderly parents up in the north there too. They're both double vaccinated. So, of course, it's personal.
But not enough. But not enough to change your mind on allowing unvaccinated visitors into Taitokoro.
Well, what we've done is try to strike a balance where we have some protections. In fact, the red level is more stringent than level 2 under the old level 2. But of course, we're all worried. I'm worried about my parents. I'm worried about my extended whānau. And even vaccinated people can get it. But what we have to do is try to strike a balance and make sure that we have protected as many people as possible. There hasn't been a lack of opportunity for people to get vaccinated. But some people are just digging in their toes, and they're the hardest ones to turn. In fact, what they're doing is...
So is it the region's fault? Is it the region's fault because people haven't got off their backsides?
It's the fault of the people who haven't got off their backsides for not getting off their backsides. They've got to get out.
But then does everybody else have to pay for that, which is the argument that these leaders are putting forward? They would like to protect the whole area, and yes, some people may not have gone and got their vaccination, but should the whole area suffer because of that?
Well, like Hone Harawe actually said, that there are two worlds here colliding, and one world is very scared and the other world is very angry. We've also got to be mindful. In fact, I had representations from 130-odd businesses with representing 3,600 workers, the majority of whom are Māori, and they risk shutting down and losing their livelihoods. That's why I say the government is working to strike a balance between all the needs of the area.
So what's going to happen with the border? The open letter that was sent to the government said there was an agreement with the Taitokoro Border Control and Police that there were going to be checks south of Whangarei. How hard is that border going to be? What can people expect if they are heading north?
Well, what's great to see is that iwi have been working alongside police, and they have been working to set up the checkpoint. I don't have the details of what that looks like. I haven't been involved in those conversations, but there will be south of Whangarei people being pulled over. There is a high chance that they'll be pulled over if they're not vaccinated and they are from Auckland, then they risk a $1,000 fine.
And that's Taitokoro MP and Minister Kelvin Davis. Homai o whakaro, we would love your feedback. Nō reira anei na kaupapa mō te hōtaka nei. Unvaccinated travellers, as long as they've had a COVID test and they're negative, are you happy for them to be travelling around the country? Would they be welcome in your neighbourhood? Is it enough? Let us know your thoughts. Pātui mai, text me on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. From midnight tonight, the whole country will be in the new traffic light framework, so it'll be goodbye alert levels, hello, red and orange, no green just yet. Councils around the country are applying the new rules differently when it comes to people using pools and libraries, and only some will be asking you to show a COVID passport before you get in. Conan Young reports.
One of those choosing not to require proof of vaccination is Waitaki District Council. Its website says the new system is, quote, pretty much business as normal. To use the pool and library in Oamaru, you'll just need a mask and to scan in using your COVID Tracer app. District Mayor Gary Kircher says they're taking their lead from the government.
We're a district that still hasn't had a COVID case at all, and there may be a bit level of complacency. It's certainly my intention that if COVID is present in our community, that we tighten up those restrictions quite quickly.
Mayor Kircher says if it was up to him, they would require vaccine certificates, but elected members have decided to leave it up to council staff to apply the rules.
Yeah, we want to make sure that those who are just genuinely hesitant have the opportunity to actually get in there. I think there's enough other restrictions are happening that it'll help encourage them.
It's the same situation in Invercargill, where most of the council services will be available to the vaccinated and unvaccinated alike. However, Council Chief Executive Claire Hadley says that could all change after a full meeting of the council considers their approach on Tuesday.
We have an unusual power in the sense that we collect rates, which is effectively a tax.
I think that it's something that we should do in partnership with elected members. They receive the feedback from the community, and I would like them to be involved in this decision making.
At the other end of the country in Auckland, it will be anything but business as usual when the traffic lights get switched on. From 5 tomorrow morning, gym bunnies will be allowed to work out in council facilities for the first time in months, and from Monday, the city's swimming pools will reopen. The doors will also be flung open at libraries, galleries and museums. But all will remain off limits for the unvaccinated. Auckland Council spokesperson Claudia Weiss says it's all about keeping people safe.
We've been really wanting to make sure that we can do absolutely everything we can to protect people in our community who might be vulnerable, and also protect children who can't yet have the vaccination because they're under the age of 12.
But Claudia Weiss says the unvaccinated won't be completely shut out.
So we have really popular click and collect services at our libraries. We'll be continuing that. We're looking at providing outdoor seating or accessible options outdoors, Wi-Fi services for people who want to use the Wi-Fi, who might want to enjoy a book but can't come into the facility. So for our active rec, we're looking at outdoor classes.
Dr Weiss says at the red setting there will still be capacity limits at many places, and she's pleading with Aucklanders to be patient and remember that while council staff are in charge of applying the rules, they're not responsible for coming up with them.
Double dose or you'll be left out in the wilderness when it comes to dock campsites and huts. The Conservation Department's bringing in a mandatory vaccination policy for all accommodation facilities from mid-December. It says the accommodation's often remote and people from all over the place stay together, so vaccination will significantly reduce the risk of COVID spreading. Joining me now is DOC's Heritage and Visitors Director, Steve Taylor. Kia ora, Steve. Can you just give us the broad brushstrokes? What facilities are we talking about and who exactly needs to be fully vaccinated?
Yeah, sure. Good evening. So we're talking about the facilities really that are at higher risk. So those where people often share the same common area to sleep in or congregate for a long period of time within an enclosed area. So that's the huts, the campsites, lodges, and we're also identifying areas in the immediate proximity of our huts as well, because they're often shared by users of the huts and they'll often go in and use the hut facilities.
So you mean, places where people might sit outside and eat their food and sit about and chat?
No, the outside areas are generally okay. So the risk assessment that we've done has identified that we're really concerned about within the building. So within the hut itself, within the common ablution areas of campgrounds, also communal kitchen type facilities. So we're encouraging, in fact requesting that those who aren't double vaccinated stay away from those areas. There will of course be the bulk of full conservation land completely available, so the full track network and those toilets associated with that track network.
So you're allowed on the track and you can use the toilet facilities if you're not double vaccinated. Anywhere where you sleep over, no.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so who needs to be vaccinated exactly, Steve?
Yeah, so everybody who is eligible for vaccination, we're anticipating or expecting them to be double vaccinated. And again, this is really something that...
so 12 years and up is your...
That's correct. Yeah, so 12 years and I think 3 months it is, and if they have a valid exemption as well from the Ministry of Health.
That's slightly different. Some other businesses and even government policies where they've set the benchmark at 18. Why did you go down so low?
So this is based on the population that is eligible for vaccination. So we've directed at those, ensure that if you can get vaccinated, then you should be. If you aren't eligible for vaccination, then obviously that expectation doesn't apply.
Okay, so how are you going to police it?
So we're going to certainly prioritise policing in those areas or enforcing, checking the status in those areas where there are large numbers of people congregating, staying overnight, etc., where we have staff in place. Having said that, there will be some locations where simply staff members are not present. So in some of the remote locations, some of the backcountry areas, there simply won't be DOC staff there to check, and people need to know that heading into those areas.
So it's an honesty system?
It is, and in some areas, although anybody in that location needs to be prepared for somebody to come and ask to see evidence of their vaccination status. And are you going
to kick them out, Steve, if they don't have any evidence?
We'll always put safety first, and that's always been the principle on conservation land and these huts as well. Our first priority is to keep people safe, and if it's not safe, if it's a storm blowing out there, if there's a terrible rainstorm coming through, then obviously would work with that person to ensure that they remain isolated, that we minimise the risk of transmission to others in the hut at that time. But we've got to apply some common sense in these situations. It's not going to be a simple one rule fits all.
So in terms of booking, at time of booking, will they have to produce any evidence?
So from the 15th of December, in fact heading towards the 15th of December, which is the date on which this requirement comes into force, people making bookings will need to provide verification that they have been double vaccinated. So there's a number of ways in which they can do that. Obviously, the My Vaccination Pass would be the easiest way to do that.
So what about people who've already booked, though, and who may not be vaccinated? What happens with them?
Yeah, so for those, and there are a large number that will have already booked for the coming season, we'll be sending them some correspondence in the next day or two, advising them of these new requirements. If they're unwilling to accept the terms, the conditions, which requires the double vaccination, we'll be offering a full refund.
Okay, so you want all your visitors staying in these huts and campgrounds to be vaccinated. What's the deal with your staff then? Are they fully vaccinated?
So it's certainly staff in the high-use area are double vaccinated. We are currently consulting with staff on full vaccine requirements, and we're just working through that process with staff at the moment.
Good to talk to you, Steve. That's Steve Taylor from DOC. E te iwi e haere ake nei I a Checkpoint. The annual New Year's Rhythm and Vines Festival gets a new life on Easter weekend. The festival director joins us live, and the perfect new employee at a Dunedin pharmacy. Homai o Whakaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the programme this evening. Let us know what's on your mind. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email is checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It's time for the headlines now. Ane a karamina pita pita kōrero.
8 victims of a serial Auckland school paedophile spoke before his sentencing today about the lifelong effects of his abuse. Ross Douglas Brown was today sentenced to 6.5 years for sexually assaulting 14 boys over 15 years at Dilworth School when he was school chaplain. The victims spoke about their broken marriages, drug addiction, jail time and mental health problems. Justice Toogood said Ross Brown's offending was calculated and predatory. The police and iwi will set up checkpoints in Northland after December the 15th when the border around Auckland reopens. Police say they are working with iwi to ensure visitors are welcomed after the boundaries open and vulnerable communities are protected. The country's biggest New Year's festival, Rhythm and Vines in Gisborne, has been postponed until Easter. Tairawhiti is in the red light setting from tomorrow and has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. Local iwi and many locals are against holding the event. The National Party's new leader is heaping praise on Simon Bridges, who has been appointed Finance and Infrastructure spokesperson. Christopher Luxon says he and Simon Bridges have been friends for a long time, and he was chosen on merit rather than a deal being struck between them for the leadership. The rest of National's caucus reshuffle will be announced on Monday. The incoming United States ambassador says New Zealand's nuclear-free position will not challenge the two countries' defence alliance. New Zealand is not party to the recent AUKUS security pact between Australia, the United Kingdom and the United States. Tom Udall says he does not see this as an impediment to the country's relationship. And the annual Kokako nest survey is underway in Auckland's Hunua Ranges. By monitoring 6 nests, the survey provides a snapshot of how well the breeding season is going. Auckland Council's senior ranger says at the last population survey in 2018, there were 106 breeding pairs of Kokako in the area. We'll have more news at 6.
Thanks, Karen. No mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Ko taku hoa e nai ko Nona Peltier, who is here, of course, to talk business. Nona, workplace burnout is soaring as workers find it harder to balance their work life with the pressures from the COVID pandemic. What are the numbers we're talking here?
Yeah, we're talking quite a big increase from prior to the pandemic, when 1 in 9 felt that they were suffering from burnout. These days, it's 1 in 3. And that's partly because people are working from home. They're always connected. There's always that temptation to just get a little bit more work done and so forth. So the interruption of the work-home balance has been disrupted. And yeah, people are feeling the stress. It's been, I guess, a lot of people are going to be really happy to be able to come back to work because perhaps being in the office is less stressful than having the office at home.
Yeah, it'd be great to have you back in the studio sometime soon, Nona.
Could happen.
Yeah. Hey, let's talk about the Swedish flat pack furniture giant IKEA. I'm getting PTSD just thinking about this, with the screwdriver and all the bits and pieces that never seem to match up. Now, they've taken a significant step and they're opening in New Zealand. What is the latest?
Yes, well, we heard that they would open in late 2018. They said that they would do this. Here we are, late 2021, and yep, they're still planning to open. In fact, they have a conditional agreement to buy a 3.2 hectare site right next to the Sylvia Park shopping complex. And for people who aren't familiar with that, it's probably New Zealand's largest shopping mall. And it is a complex where the owner, which is Kiwi Property, are planning to build rent-to-own apartments, office, there's a, train, you name it. It's sort of a town all on its own. And also, Kiwi Property is planning to develop a 6,500 square meter complementary large format retail centre right next to IKEA. I don't know what that will be. There were not very many details. In fact, we don't really know when it will be constructed or when it would really open. But if for anybody who hasn't been to an IKEA store, it's an experience. It's sort of a maze of an endless maze where you just get to walk through secret entrances to find your way out, or else just stuck in there for about an hour while you munch away on your Swedish meatballs.
Yeah, they do feed you in there. It keeps you in there for longer, Nona.
I think.
Now, what are the market's numbers today?
Well, we fell 54 points, and that's the NZX Top 50 Index. 54 points down. That's a 0.4% drop to 12,670. And we're seeing sort of choppy trading in Asia. There is a lot of concern about this new COVID variant. What is it going to mean? We've heard some mixed stories about it. Well, time will tell. Meanwhile, the dollar is steady, but still, near that it's at 68.2 US cents. 95.8 Australian. Seems to have been stuck there for quite a long time. And 51.3 British pence.
Ngā mihi, Nona. That's Nona Peltier with Business News. The new national leader has made his first major appointment, giving his almost rival, Simon Bridges, the much-coveted and high-profile finance portfolio. Christopher Luxon travelled to Tauranga today to make the announcement alongside the local MP, but it didn't go quite as planned. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
You're ready to go?
Cameras on, mics up, and new leader in place.
Take your time. All good.
Everything you need for your first big announcement in the job. Almost.
Now, I'm supposed to be here with my good friend Simon Bridges, but I want to tell you what's happened is in the last hour, one of his sons has had an accident at school and now he's in hospital. And so Simon texted me 20 minutes ago to say that he can't be with us, and I've told him, mate, please just stay with your family.
Not quite the show of unity Chris Luxon had been hoping for after travelling to Tauranga to stand by his almost rival. The announcement this: Simon Bridges will be his number 3, National's money man, the new finance and infrastructure spokesperson.
I think he's going to be amazing. He is a really prodigious talent. He's got a big brain, so he's going to be taking it to Grant Robertson.
The appointment's a little surprise, call it quid pro quo. Mr Bridges has been in line for the job ever since dropping out of Tuesday's leadership contest and instead endorsing Mr Luxon.
He's got a really clear sense of what he's about and what he wants to do for New Zealand, and that excites me.
There's been no deals done, there's been nothing nothing like that. It's actually fundamentally been about making sure we put the right person on the right task.
Simon Bridges' credentials are by now well known. A former lawyer, former Transport Minister, former National leader. He wanted his old job back but couldn't get the numbers. So can Mr Luxon trust him not to try it again?
Absolutely. Total trust him.
The decision spells an end to the experiment that was a shared finance portfolio dreamed up by Judith Collins and split between Andrew Bailey and Michael Woodhouse.
It worked for the time, but this is a different time, and the new leadership team want to take things in a different direction. I completely understand that, and I'm looking forward to a new challenge.
Chris Bishop is another who could have handled finance, one of the party's strongest performers with a current focus on COVID.
I'm just happy with whatever Christopher wants me to do.
He'll find out soon enough. The remaining jobs are to be divvied out over the weekend and announced Monday. That's one former leader now dealt with. The next question, what to do with the others? Todd Muller and Judith Collins.
The Women's Tennis Association is suspending all tournaments in China following the disappearance of star player Peng Shuai. It's a move that's been welcomed by leading world tennis players. Felicity Reid reports.
A month ago, Chinese tennis star Peng Shuai took to social media to accuse a top Chinese official of sexual assault. The post was quickly deleted and she disappeared for 3 weeks. Serena Williams was among the many who tweeted under the hashtag #WhereIsPengShui. Eventually, a series of videos and pictures of Peng were released by Chinese media. Many dismissed it as a publicity stunt. Now the Women's Tennis Association has pulled the pin on tournaments in China. Its chief executive, Steve Simon, says he can't see how he can ask athletes to compete there when he has doubts about how Peng is being treated.
When you're dealing with an issue of sexual assault and harassment, I don't believe decisions associated with that can be compromised. And as a result of that, we're taking obviously a very strong stance, and that the full investigation needs to happen, and that this cannot be swept under the rug.
The move's been supported by tennis greats including Billie Jean King, 18-time Grand Slam winner Martina Navratilova, and former world number 1 Andy Roddick. Former New Zealand professional tennis player Brenda Perry has been the co-tournament director of the Wuhan Open, a WTA 1000 event, since 2019. She says what's happened to Peng Shuai has hit the tennis community hard.
It's a colleague, it's a fellow player who people have had for 20 years, have known, have played with, played against, had lunch with, travelled with, seen every day, practiced with. And so this is very, very personal, I guess.
But she reckons the door is still open for the WTA to return to China.
I think it'll be interesting to see, so what happens if tennis leaves China? Will it bring about change? Would it bring about more change if it stayed? Those are unknown questions.
Steve Simon says the WTA want to be able to do more for Peng, but have been unable to contact her.
We have received assurances from the Chinese Tennis Association that she is safe and not in harm's way. But we haven't been able to speak with her directly, and we haven't been able to reflect to her directly our concerns and be able to reflect all of the support that's available to her that we'd like to provide and would.
But the International Olympic Committee isn't concerned about the whereabouts of the 3-time Olympian. Peng recently spoke with IOC President Thomas Bach, telling him she was safe and with family and friends. Former IOC Vice President Dick Pound told CNN he trusts his colleague's call with Peng was genuine.
These are people who are, they've dealt with athletes and dealt with pressure. They know they can tell whether somebody is behaving under duress or not. And their unanimous conclusion was that she was fine, and she just asked that her privacy be respected for the time being.
Pound denied that the IOC's stance was influenced by the impending Beijing Winter Olympics and the possible financial fallout.
It is 17 minutes to 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. He Muriaki in Pita Pita Kōrero after the news at 6 has COVID killed the youth hostel. Rhythm and Vines resurrected in the last 15 minutes. Event organisers have announced the annual New Year's Festival, held in Gisborne, has been postponed until Easter next year. The decision comes after the region was placed into the red traffic light, meaning events with more than 100 people cannot take place. Pressure's also been placed on festival organisers by local iwi, who called for it to be canned due to COVID fears. Tairāwhiti is one of the least vaccinated regions in the country, with just 77% of people double-dosed. RNV's Festival Director Kieran Spillane joins me now. Hey, Kieran, why have you called it now?
I think probably our take on it, Lisa, is that with the setting being at red, it's and the vaccination rates being where they are, it's very, very unlikely that Gisborne will get to that orange setting at least until early next year.
So have you had any conversations with the government? Because they are due to review on December the 13th, so there was still one last chance.
Yeah, I mean, and there's also, with that as well, but there's also we spoke with the Tairafiti iwi on a very good meeting with them on Friday morning, and also they're just bearing in mind the concerns of the local community, that they all are very concerned about their low vaccination rates. So it was time. We do think it's the correct decision, bearing those factors in mind, and for us it's a pause and a reset, and we're very excited to do something quite unique in our 19-year history and run rhythm and vines at Easter.
So what does it all mean in practical terms? I mean, what about acts and logistics? I mean, what is your lineup for a start? We kind of have to sort of start again, really. But we have some plans in place, obviously, for some of our acts when the Easter dates no longer work. So we're a little bit back to the drawing board, but we have certainly a lot of the vast majority of our Kiwi talent is prepared to play at Easter. So we'll juggle things around and hopefully be able to announce something, another wonderful R&B lineup very shortly. The festival kicks off before the border opens to international visitors, right? So does that mean you're going to have to wrangle MIQ for any acts you plan to bring in from overseas?
Yeah, we'll have to go back to that system again. We're in the lottery system as same as anybody else. So we'll be back at that again.
What if the district is not at 90% double vaxxed at Easter? There's been a suggestion that the festival would not go ahead based on its own principles if there was not 90% double vaxxed.
No, absolutely. We safety is our primary concern, and not just the safety of our patrons and staff at the event. It's the safety of the local community as well. So we need to be at orange for this event to go ahead. So we're ever hopeful that we've given Gisborne the time to get their vaccine rates up, and hopefully they'll be at a much higher vaccine rate, and everybody's a lot more comfortable with how we're dealing with COVID throughout the country.
Yeah, Kieran, there are some people in Orange, districts in Orange, that aren't at 90%. So what happens if Gisborne goes to Orange, but there is not a 90% double dose rate, which the festival has specified previously that's what it would require? So will you forego that target if you're in Orange?
The decision to move from red to orange or whatever is obviously made by government and the Ministry of Health. We will certainly take into account how the region is, but I would think it's unlikely that Gisborne would move to orange if they're not at 90%.
How many people have asked for refunds, and specifically ones who don't want to be vaccinated? Do you know?
We had about, I think it was 8% of our, because obviously you're right, it's a requirement to attend these events, you have to be fully vaccinated. We had about 8% of people who decided that they didn't want to get vaccinated. So that's probably their loss. But...
And refunds, can people get them if Easter doesn't suit?
Yes, they can. So we're opening up a 2-week window for anybody. If the dates don't suit, they will get a full refund.
Best of luck. Thank you for joining us. That's R&V's Festival Director, Kieran Spillane, who was just talking there about the New Year's Festival being moved to Easter. The Mayor of Whanganui is supporting an iwi leaders' call for holidaymakers to steer clear of the region this summer. Hamish McDougall says with the low Māori vaccination rates in the region, he can understand why iwi would want visitors to stay away. Our Taranaki Whanganui reporter Robin Martin has more.
The fully vaccinated rate for Māori in the Whanganui DHB area is 67%, just under the national rate. The region's also trailing behind for the general population, 79% here, 86% nationwide. Hamish McDougall says he can understand that the vulnerable communities along the Whanganui River Road in particular would not want an influx of tourists increasing their risk profile.
We've got to remember that COVID doesn't drive a car and COVID doesn't get on a bus.
it's the people carrying the COVID that are the concern, and so essentially I support the Ngā Tangata Te Aki stance of saying, look, actually, we'd prefer you to stay home.
Mr McDougall says he still expects people to travel to Whanganui, especially to visit family, but he urges them to observe COVID-19 protocols if they do.
If you're coming to Whanganui for Christmas to see relatives, I can understand that, but to just bring all that personal responsibility with you if you're leaving places which have COVID, and most importantly, if you're feeling sick, don't come.
He says his own Auckland-based mother-in-law will be visiting her grandchildren over the summer for the first time in 6 months. Ngā Tangata Te Aki o Whanganui chairwoman Sheena Maru told Midday Report it took the stance after receiving feedback from the community.
Well, obviously, as you know, there's a heightened sense of anxiety around Aotearoa as the borders will start to open, and we know that lots of people, will escape those big cities and come to us. We're not quite ready.
Ms Maru says hapu iwi are building up their defences through information and a continued vaccination drive.
That's the thing, is that we're asking for more time. Our people in our community at large need to know more before they do that. Like other iwi around the motu, we're standing up opportunities where we are going into the corners of our communities to those who can't necessarily access vaccination stations that are currently here. So we're getting on the road.
Ms Maru says each region's story is different, but that she supports other iwi also asking for holidaymakers to consider staying away. In Whanganui, opinion on Ngā Tangata Te Aki's stance is divided.
We want to be safe to Whanganui and our community, Eidawai.
Nah, people will do as they please.
They've got as much chance to get the jab as we have. I'm comfortable with that. I mean, we live on the marae anyways.
If you're fully vaxxed, come.
The government's not done enough to protect the Maori and Pacifica.
I think they're their own worst enemies.
I think people should be able to come here if they're double vaxxed and got their passes and so forth.
Whanganui is one of several regions that will wake up in the red zone tomorrow morning.
Kevin, the COVID-busting kitty cat, is the new support staff member at the Port Chalmers Pharmacy COVID vaccine clinic. His role includes cuddles and, of course, cuteness for patients as they get their vaccinations. Third-year pharmacy student Nicole Kennedy works part-time at the pharmacy, and she's also Kevin's mum, and she joins us now. And I think Kevin probably joins us too. Hey, Nicole. Introduce your furry friend to us, please. That's Kev. What kind of cat is he? Can you describe him to people who can't see him?
So he's a Burman ragdoll.
Cute as a button. How did it come about that he's comes into the pharmacy?
So we got him as a brand new kitten the day before, and because we've been working Saturdays at the pharmacy to run our COVID clinic, I didn't want to leave him at home on his own. And so my manager said to just bring him in, and all of our patients seemed to love having the little kitten running around the pharmacy. It just helped calm some nerves and gave people a bit of entertainment while they were hanging around after they've had their vaccine.
So what does Kev do? Does he lounge around somewhere in particular, or where's his post in the pharmacy?
So I have like a little mesh enclosure for him that we can put him in if he's being a bit annoying, but generally he can just wander around, and Angela's daughter Liv would just carry him round to all of the patients and give them a little pat of him while they're waiting to get their vaccine.
That must be quite cool to watch. How do they react, and how do you reckon he helps if people are just a little bit nervous?
I think it's just great stress relief having a cute little kitten there, and it's a good distraction from having to get an injection, I guess. And people seem to love it. Like, we had people coming in just walking past. They'd see Kevin wandering around the pharmacy and come in to give him a pat, even if they weren't there for a vaccine.
What's his personality like?
He's pretty mischievous at the moment. He's only 8 weeks old, so he just runs around everywhere, and yeah, he's pretty mischievous.
And obviously 11-year-olds and up can get the vaccination at the moment. Do the kids in particular, are they drawn to him?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really good for the kids coming in, especially if they're not with their parents. It's nice to have something that makes them feel a bit more comfortable in the pharmacy.
Where has Kevin wombled off to? Can you coax him back for us? Because he is a real cutie and we just got a passing glimpse of him.
Yeah, we'll just try grab him. He's gone running away.
What do they say about working with children and animals? Come on, Kevin, come back. We'd love to see you.
Come on.
Let's see if we can coax him in. Oh, we've got a bit of a toy. Oh, there he is. He's absolutely gorgeous. He's got bright blue eyes, hasn't he? And kind of darker little ears and such a cute little face. And so he's quite cool and relaxed when he's hanging out at the pharmacy?
Yeah, he's generally quite cool and he loves the attention of having everyone around doting over him. So,
well, it's fantastic to meet you both. Thanks for joining us, Nicole, and also for Kevin, who is the pharmacy assistant there. Great for cuddles, calms the nerves if you're going in for your jab. The annual Kokako Nest Survey is underway deep in Auckland's Whanganui Ranges. Years of hard work mean the Kokako population is booming with more than 100 breeding pairs. But how do you keep an eye on just how many chicks are hatching each year? Our reporter Sarah Robson went out to the Whanganui Ranges to see how it's done.
In a small clearing deep in the Whanganui Ranges, a team of conservationists are preparing to scale a tree. About 15 metres up, there's a Kokako nest, mum, dad and 2 chicks. It's one of 6 nests being monitored as part of the annual Nest Survey, which tries to get a handle on how well each breeding season is going. It's Declan Morrison's job to go out and find the nests.
Yeah, follow them around for as long as you can. Sometimes they'll tend to hop between trees as opposed to flying, so you can follow them on foot. Once you see them enter a tree and stay there or visit a tree, you hear some small tooks, then leave, you've likely got a nest there.
Kokako can have 2, sometimes 3 nests each breeding season. But as Declan explains, they're not always in the most accessible places.
Some of them you can climb without a ladder, without ropes. Others you need ladders, others you need ropes and Dave and Amanda to come in. And others, if it's in a skinny tree or too high up, we just can't bother. And if that's the case, we have to follow the pairs after the chicks have fledged to find out how many chicks they've had.
Dave Bryden and Amanda Rogers are Kokako ecologists. They're called in to get to those hard-to-reach nests and help with the banding.
We've already fired a rope over the tree, or over a limb in the tree, nice sturdy limb, and so I'm just going to use canopy access equipment to ascend up the rope up to the nest.
But before Dave Bryden shimmies up the rope, the team has to wait for the parents to fly off.
When the parents have left to go get more food, then we'll nip up there, take the chicks out, and we'll put them in a black cotton bag, and then I'll bring the chicks back down onto the ground where Amanda and Declan can put the individual colour bands and their metal band on their legs so that in the future we can tell them apart from all the other kokako.
But the parents aren't too bothered by the disturbance of their nest, and neither really are the chicks.
The chicks at this stage, they're quite young, so we try and band the chicks when they're about 13 to 16 days old. Any larger, so if the chicks are older than about 20 days old, they're a little bit more alert, but at this stage they're pretty docile. I mean, they've got their eyes open, but they're pretty much just away with the fairies.
Once on the ground, the chicks can be weighed and banded.
Our one little fella, nice and docile. Oh, he was. Now I'm just going to hold up the legs for Amanda to band, holding it in the bander's grip so it can't damage itself or I can't damage him.
Auckland Council Senior Ranger Miranda Bennett says the Kokako population in the Whanganui Ranges has come a long way since the mid-90s, when there was just 1 breeding pair.
There's been quite an extensive pest control program undertaken over the last sort of 30 years, and alongside that we've done translocation of adult birds into the Whanuas from other populations to try and boost the genetics of our Whanua population.
At the last population survey in 2018, there were 106 breeding pairs. The next survey is next year, and they're hoping that number could top 200. In the meantime, the annual Nest Survey gives them a snapshot of what's going on.
With 6 nests, and each of those nests, let's say they have 2 chicks, we can then say if we've got over 100 pairs breeding, hopefully we're putting over 200 chicks into the population each year.
But that's not where the hard work ends. The next job is to make sure those chicks reach adulthood, pair up and become breeders themselves.
A lot of you getting in touch about the issue of people travelling north and to other places, and they can do so if they're unvaccinated, if they've got a negative COVID test within the past 72 hours. This person says, I've always felt that a 72-hour negative test is almost as good as useless. I agree with the iwi. Double vax visitors to Northland welcome, but others please return at a later time. And everyone take a deep breath and know this too will pass. Teresa says, please remember all of us in Northland fully vaxxed, looking forward to seeing our whānau for Christmas. Also all fully vaxxed, without them spending hours and hours in queues manned by iwi checking all travellers. It is completely unfair on those who have done the right thing. And as Kelvin says, the unvaxxed are never going to get vaccinated. Noel says, you ask if we think it's okay that unvaccinated visit us. Well, in Queenstown, absolutely not. We're still COVID-free here and we don't want them under any circumstances. We do not want them. And this person says, Minister Davis, whakarongo. Please listen to your iwi and DHB, only people fully vaccinated to cross into our Northland for the summer. Not some grey in between. You're the MP for Te Tai Tokerau. Please listen to your people. On the issue of DOC mandating vaccinations for people staying in their huts and campsites. This person says, so you arrive at a hut and can't stay because you're not vaccinated and have to walk back 4 hours to get out again. Really? Well, they're asking for a bit of honesty here. And someone else says, my son is a DOC ranger. They have it tough enough dealing with people without the unvaccinated.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Pike mai, kake mai. Good afternoon, I'm Karen McCarthy. The government is defending moving Northland into the greater freedoms of the COVID traffic light system despite its low vaccination rates. Iwi are worried COVID cases will spike and the virus will become rampant over summer. Te Tai Tokerau MP Kelvin Davis acknowledges that some people are fearful, but says the rules mean those who haven't been vaccinated won't be able to do much. He told Checkpoint the region has to learn to live with COVID.
In fact, I had representations from 130-odd businesses with representing 3,600 workers, the majority of whom are Māori. They risk shutting down and losing their livelihoods. That's why I say the government is working to strike a balance between all the needs of the area.
Kelvin Davis says the best thing people can do is get vaccinated. The police and iwi will set up checkpoints in the region after December the 15th, when the border around Auckland reopens. The country's biggest New Year's festival has been postponed until Easter. Rhythm and Vines, held in Gisborne, will now take place across Easter weekend from April the 15th to 17th. Tairāwhiti is in the red light setting from tomorrow and has one of the lowest vaccination rates in the country. Local iwi and many locals are against holding the event, which attracts more than 20,000 people. In a statement, Rhythm and Vines says it wants to thank everyone who is affected by the decision. All tickets remain valid for the new dates, but there is a 14-day refund for people who can't attend over Easter. Locals on Aotearoa, Great Barrier Island, are worried about how holiday travellers will affect the community when the country moves into the traffic light system tomorrow. Vaccination rates on the isolated island are sitting at 80% for first doses, and there is just one primary healthcare centre. Te Aorewa Rolleston reports.
Aotea Great Barrier in the Hauraki Gulf has so far remained unaffected by the Delta variant. But that could all change for Auckland's lowest vaccinated suburb. Jeff Clee from the Ngāti Rehua Ngāti Waiki Aotea Trust says misinformation and conspiracy theories amongst their people has led to the low vaccination rates. And he is concerned unvaccinated travellers arriving by private boats without a negative test will put whānau at risk. About 930 people live on the island.
The Ministry of Health will be sending out a temporary exemption to the tens of thousands of people yet to receive their My Vaccine Pass. From tomorrow, only people who can prove their vaccination status with a pass will be able to access certain businesses, events and services. However, there are about 70,000 people requesting assistance to access a pass, including those who've been vaccinated overseas. 8 victims of a serial Auckland school paedophile have looked him in the eye and told him the effect his abuse had on them. In the High Court at Auckland today, Ross Brown was sentenced to 6.5 years in jail for sexually assaulting 14 boys over 15 years at Dilworth School. During the former school chaplain's sentencing, many spoke of the effect the abuses had on them. They include broken marriages, drug addiction, jail time and mental health problems. Justice Toogood said Brown's offending was calculated and predatory. Nationals leader Christopher Luxon is heaping praise on Simon Bridges, who has been appointed the party's new finance and infrastructure spokesperson. The rest of the caucus reshuffle will be announced on Monday, ahead of Parliament sitting next week. Christopher Luxon says he and Simon Bridges have been friends for a long time.
I worked with him in my past life when he was outstanding Minister of Transport. We did a lot of work together around electric vehicles and also around airline alliances. But he is a really prodigious talent. He's got really complementary skills. He's got a big brain and he does a great work ethic.
Despite competing with each other for the leadership, Christopher Luxon says he trusts Mr Bridges completely. The Women's Tennis Association has suspended all tournaments in China because of concerns about the well-being of the Chinese star player Peng Shuai. Peng disappeared from public view for 3 weeks after accusing a former top Communist Party official of sexual assault last month. 10 days ago, after mounting pressure, she held a video call with officials from the International Olympic Committee. But the WTA chief, Steve Simon, says he has serious doubts Peng is safe.
A full and independent investigation without any censorship needs to be held. We're not going to walk away from this, and we're not going to allow this to be swept away.
The annual Kokako nest survey is underway in Auckland's Hunua Ranges. By monitoring 6 nests, the survey provides rangers and conservationists a snapshot of how well the breeding season is going. Auckland Council Senior Ranger Miranda Bennett says at the last population survey in 2018, there were 106 breeding pairs. The next survey is next year, and they're hoping that number could top 200. In the meantime, Ms Bennett says they can track progress by checking in on the nests.
With 6 nests, and each of those nests, let's say they have 2 chicks, we can then say if we've got over 100 pairs breeding, hopefully we're putting over 200 chicks into the population each year.
Miranda Bennett says the next job is to make sure those chicks reach adulthood. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, another chapter in the story of Kiwi ceramics with Richard Fahey. Dare we mention Crown Lynn? Our overseas correspondent Rima Baus is on the line from Sudan. Dare she mention the military coup? Claire Kincannon meets the scientists listening to the Alpine Fault. And Eric Brenstrom on the world's weather, including Canada's record-breaking floods after the record-breaking heat. Who would have thought? On Nights of me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Lisa Owen and Checkpoint back in a minute after the short forecast from Met Service to midnight on Friday. For Northland, Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula, cloudy periods and isolated showers. Waikato to Whanganui, including Bay of Plenty in the central high country. Scattered showers, mainly during the afternoons and evenings. Some will be heavy. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, often cloudy with isolated showers for Gisborne. Manawatu to Wellington and Wairarapa. Mainly fine today. Cloud about Wairarapa clearing this afternoon. Cloudy periods and scattered showers tomorrow. For Nelson, Buller, Westland and Fiordland. Cloud increasing. Isolated showers turning to rain in Westland this evening and elsewhere overnight. Heavy falls in Westland tomorrow. Marlborough and Canterbury. Mostly cloudy today. Scattered rain before dawn tomorrow. Then fine spells with isolated afternoon and evening showers. Otago and Southland, cloudy periods and scattered showers. Thunderstorms are possible during the afternoons and evenings. And the Chatham Islands, cloudy periods. It's 6:07.
Kia ora rā e hoa, no mai hoki mai. This is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. It's just over 3 weeks till Christmas, and today was the last day to get a first vaccine if you want to be double vaxxed in time for Christmas. Pfizer shots were the stocking stuffer of choice in Otahuhu today, with a pop-up vaccination clinic reopening to get people vaxxed. Some of those in the queue said vaccine mandates have left them no choice but to roll up their sleeve. Here's our reporter Nick Trubridge and cameraman Nick Monroe.
Okay, thank you for coming.
The last-minute pre-Christmas rush, but not as you know it. Move over frantic shopping mall trips. Forget the final touches on that tasty turkey. This is a rush for Pfizer. Today, the last day if you want to be fully vaxxed in time for the big day, Christmas Day.
I need to get out of here, bro. I need to go back to Coromandel, do my thing. Yeah, I've got to pick up a few stuff and I got stuff out there that I need to do and get back to work pretty much.
And Christmas isn't the only thing that's driving this steady stream of traffic through this makeshift vaccination centre in Otahuhu. The vaccination rules are starting to bite. No shot, no travel. Want to keep your job? For many here, that means getting the jab.
It's because I need to go overseas for work. And so if I don't get vaccinated, I can't go.
You need a job, you need to get your jab to get it in. So can't do nothing about it.
Counties Manukau is nearly at 90% fully vaccinated, 87% to be exact, so finding those showing up for shot one is needle in a haystack stuff. There were a few here for their second shot too, some saying they took a bit of convincing.
I was still in progress, thinking about it, but I guess, as they said, do it for your family and especially for work. Yeah, we need it.
It's probably better than being trapped at home, eh? It's just, you end up getting anxiety, mental, you know what I mean? It's not very good for your mental health anyway, staying home. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So I want to get out and get the anxiety out of the way and get back to mahi.
It's too much misinformation out there. It's so hard to know what's really going on. You can't really, it's like almost like you can't trust anyone. You can't trust the media, you can't trust the news. You can't even trust like what your friends are saying because they're following those same sources of information. So it's kind of really hard to make a stand and find where your opinion lies.
William Apa is site leader here on King Street in the heart of Otahuhu.
We're finding people, even the ones that don't want to get the vaccine, they're here because they feel obliged to get the vaccine because of whatever situation they can see coming up, whether it's work or travelling.
Much has been said about Auckland starting at the more restrictive red traffic light instead of orange. Mr. Apa says there's one route to orange and then green.
We want to get out of this lockdown space and this lockdown mentality. We're very keen to shift away from the red light space actually and into the orange and green. And at the moment, the only way to do that is to get the vaccination numbers higher. And so, the general feeling is, get vaccinated. You're slowing down everyone else's, effort to try and, gain the freedoms to be able to move around the country and even move overseas eventually as well.
And there's another thing on the Christmas menu here.
This is my booster, but the other ones at the airport is pretty much, it's a different experience to this. This seems a lot more sort of vibrant, good atmosphere. And the thing is, as I'm waiting, I'm going to sit down and have a coffee while I'm waiting. So get some vouchers. I've not even seen what they're about yet, but wasn't expecting that. So, yeah, good.
Vaccines for vacations, boosters before Boxing Day, all on the eve of Auckland's move to red. And we'll put that video up online so that you can check it out. And if you're in Auckland and want to get a first or second dose tonight, there is still time. The vaccination clinic at Highbury Mall in Birkenhead is open until 8 o'clock. The youth hostel industry is on the verge of collapse, according to its own industry leaders, and COVID is the potential killer. After 89 years in business, the YHA recently announced it's permanently closing 11 properties due to border closures and the lack of international tourists. And the report by the Backpacker and Youth Adventure Travel Association and the New Zealand Hostels Association says it's no longer an issue of struggling individual hostels, but a whole industry in jeopardy. Well, joining us now is Eve Lawrence, the General Manager of Haka Tours, who helped compile the data. Hi, Eve.
Hey, Lisa, how are you?
I'm very well, but how bad is this looking?
It's looking pretty bad as it stands today. We've lost roughly 53 to 54% of businesses altogether already.
So is that entirely on COVID and the international border?
I would say that the majority would be COVID related, yes. And obviously YHA was the most recent impact of that. So, yeah, COVID is having a huge impact on the industry.
Who uses the hostels?
Predominantly the youth market, so people that would come to New Zealand and spend a long period of time here. So starting off in a gateway city and then moving around the regions for several weeks or a few months.
And not really locals?
Not particularly, no. The sector is 85 to 95% reliant on international travel. It's just not really a market that we can target domestic New Zealand, unfortunately.
Yeah, because here's the thing, Eve, and you would have heard this from the Tourism Minister, right? He reckons that we want a higher value visitor. And when we reboot post-COVID, he makes no apologies for wanting wealthy visitors. What's your view on that strategy?
Well, it's interesting because we've also had, obviously, conversations with Minister Nash, and he actually recognised or said he recognised the value that backpackers bring. So he's talking about value, but he needs to define what that value is because, yes, whilst a high net worth visitor might come here and spend a lot of money in a 2-week period, a backpacker brings a whole different type of value and potentially, over a lifetime, a lot more revenue to the country as well.
Explain that to me, Eve, because a lot of people think that they just hire a camper van and go to the supermarket and that's it.
They really don't. They really don't. It's a lifetime value model. So they'll come here for weeks, possibly months. They'll pick up a job. They'll help a local business. The average youth traveller generates 1.2 jobs, so as well as their own. And in part, that's by spending most of what they earn in New Zealand into the local economy. They'll probably go back to their country of origin, and then later in life, a lot of these people actually come back to either live here or spend another few years here and bring their families out with them. So there is a lifetime value to the youth traveller that people just don't seem to see.
So is the policy that Stuart Nash is talking about, is that short-sighted?
Very.
Okay, so at the moment you don't have international visitors and you rely on them. April is when the borders could open, still 7 days isolation. Can you hold out for that? And even when you get there, is it going to be good enough to keep you afloat?
April is just too long. This is a market that is willing to do 7 days of isolation. So take general tourists out of the equation. These people are coming here for months, so 7 days to them is nothing. What we would like is for them to open the processing of working holiday visas immediately and allow student and working holiday visa holders to return from the middle of February. At the same time, they're allowing Kiwi passport holders from the rest of the world to return. And the reason we're asking for that is because really we don't see what the difference is between a Kiwi passport holder coming back from the rest of the world and somebody with a foreign passport who's double vaxxed. There's no difference between the two, so that's what we're asking for.
Are you making any headway with the minister?
No.
So now what?
Well, we will continue to fight and advocate because we feel that we must in order for the industry to stay alive, and we'll continue to try and get those doors opened.
Really appreciate you joining us this evening. That's Eve Lawrence, the General Manager of Haka Tours, and she was also one of the people who helped compile the data for that report into the hostel industry in New Zealand. Now, in breaking news, 3 COVID-19 cases have been confirmed in Taranaki today. The 3 cases are all part of the same New Plymouth household and all have a known link to an existing case in Rotorua. The Ministry of Health is encouraging anyone with symptoms, no matter how mild, to get tested. It is almost 17 minutes past 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. As cases of Omicron continue to pop up around the world, scientists are racing to study the variant under the microscope. Researchers might have enough data in a couple of weeks to know if Omicron is able to evade immunity from current vaccines or prior infection, and if it causes worse symptoms than other COVID variants. The ABC's Tom Joyner reports.
At first, Angelique Kutsi thought the young man sitting across from her was suffering from exhaustion or heat stroke. He'd been working outdoors under the sun and had complained of fatigue and a slight headache.
I don't know what made me decide to test him. I did a rapid test on him, then saw it was positive. I think the patient saw the shock on my face.
After weeks of low case numbers and several more patients presenting in her clinic with similar symptoms, Dr. Kutsi, a family GP in Pretoria, South Africa, felt something was not quite right.
I think after the 5th patient, I decided to alert the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Vaccines And I WhatsApped them and I said, listen, maybe it's something else going on.
What Dr. Kutsi had stumbled upon is now known to be Omicron, the new variant of the coronavirus that's since spread across South Africa and popped up in other countries, including Australia. Even weeks after making her initial report, there's still very little we know about it, in particular, how transmissible it is, how effective our vaccines are against it, and whether or not it's reason to panic.
At the moment, it's all speculation based on genetic data, and it's not the best way to make decisions.
Professor Tumbi Ndungu, an immunologist at the Africa Health Research Institute in Durban, South Africa, and his team are some of the many scientists around the world racing to better understand the Omicron variant by growing it themselves.
In order for us to understand what the virus is actually doing, you need to study it in a lab, in a well-controlled condition. It's actually very straightforward. You get the sample.
They find samples of the virus, they expose it to cells in the lab, and they incubate it.
That's how you grow viruses in general.
It may still be weeks until Professor Ndungu and his team have a clearer picture of how Omicron actually behaves, or for that matter, where it might have originated. What was first thought of as a Southern African variant has now been reported in other countries, even before the first cases were picked up in South Africa. But wherever it did come from, many public health experts say the situation would have been very different if countries in Africa had better access to vaccines.
I think the world is to some extent paying the price for not supporting sub-Saharan Africa in terms of donating vaccine doses quicker and earlier.
Dr. Michael Head researches public health in Africa at the University of Southampton.
In some ways, it's quite simple. In Southern Africa, the rates of vaccination are very, very low, and uncontrolled outbreaks do happen. So if we can get all populations around the world vaccinated as quickly as possible, we reduce the risks of new variants emerging in the future.
Back in his Durban lab, Professor Ndungu and his team of researchers spend most of their days around the Omicron variant, experimenting and testing. Meanwhile, the rest of the world has little choice but to wait anxiously for answers.
I mean, from a scientific point of view, it's exciting, but this is important information that we are trying to generate so that the world knows how to respond. So there's a weight of responsibility that comes with it.
China hasn't confirmed any cases of the Omicron variant, but in a remote part of the country on the border with Russia, COVID cases are soaring. The government has responded by shutting down an entire city. CNN's Will Ripley reports.
In northern China, COVID-19 is flaring up again. Hundreds of thousands on lockdown. Confirmed cases rising. More than 130 since Sunday. Most in Manzhouli, Inner Mongolia, a crucial gateway to Russia.
The risk of community transmission is relatively high in there, and the tracing and screening work of outflowing personnel at risk is in progress.
This normally bustling border city paralyzed. 300,000 people banned from leaving. Mass testing underway. Public transport suspended. Schools and businesses closed. Authorities racing to rein in the outbreak, banning imports of non-container goods believed to be the source of the first local infection. This is what it's like living under China's zero COVID strategy. The Beijing Winter Olympics right around the corner. Officials say the games will go on, despite the risk from a new coronavirus variant.
I believe it will definitely pose some challenge to our efforts to prevent and control the virus. But as China has experience in preventing and controlling the coronavirus, I fully believe that China will be able to host the Winter Olympics as scheduled, smoothly and successfully.
China has yet to report a single case of the Omicron variant, with cases rising in the north, the nation boosting its defenses.
China has already made the technological preparations to adapt our vaccines.
Just weeks after containing China's biggest Delta outbreak, Inner Mongolia now on the front lines as China fights to keep Omicron out.
30 endangered white rhinos are settling into their new home in Rwanda. They were flown in from South Africa to protect them from poachers and to help them thrive. This report from CNN's Zane Asher.
40 hours and some 3,400 kilometres. 30 white rhinos complete a long journey from South Africa to a new home in Rwanda. It's the largest single transfer of the species and a move to replenish the white rhino's struggling population, one largely devastated by poaching since the 1970s. The journey was no easy feat. White rhinos are one of the largest land mammal species and can weigh up to 2 tons. Following months of preparation, the partially sedated rhinos were transferred from South Africa's Phinda Private Game Reserve. They boarded a Boeing 747 to Rwanda to their final destination, Akagera National Park, a space that the staff of African Parks believes will provide a safe haven for the threatened species.
White rhinos are being persecuted on the continent. Their numbers, they are not stable. They're on a knife edge. They could go either way. If something happened to Kenya or to South Africa on the scene of white rhinos, that is where the majority of white rhinos are. Then white rhinos are really on the brink of extinction. So it makes no better sense than to bring them into safe areas we know where they would thrive.
Grunner says the animals will be safer here than they were in South Africa, where he says 3 rhinos daily are killed by poachers.
We brought black rhinos here in 2017. They are thriving. We brought the lions here. They are thriving. We've proven as the management of the park, but also with the government collaboration, that it's a safe, progressive place and that we can ensure their security.
Poaching remains the primary threat to these animals, targeted for their horns. There are only about 20,000 southern white rhinos remaining, considered near threatened. And only 2 females of another subspecies, the northern white rhino, on the brink of extinction. The 30 white rhinos are welcome additions to the park, which has seen a decline in tourism during the COVID-19 pandemic.
The Women's Tennis Association says it's suspending all tournaments in China following the disappearance of star player Peng Shuai. Peng disappeared for 3 weeks after accusing a top communist official of sexual assault. The BBC's Courtney Bembridge reports.
It's been a month since Peng Shuai posted on social media accusing a top Chinese official of sexual assault. The post was quickly taken down and she disappeared from public view. Photos and videos released by Chinese state media were supposed to show her safe and free, but did little to allay concerns for her safety. And now the Women's Tennis Association has pulled the plug on lucrative tournaments in China. Its chief, Steve Simon, says he has serious doubts that Peng Shuai is free, safe and not subject to intimidation, and he added in good conscience, "I don't see how I can ask our athletes to compete there." China is a key market for women's tennis, and the decision could cost the WTA hundreds of millions of dollars in broadcasting and sponsorship. But the tennis community has come out in support of the decision. American former number 1 Billie Jean King tweeted, "I applaud the WTA leadership for taking a strong stand on defending human rights in China and around the world. The WTA is on the right side of history in supporting our players." It's a crucial time for sport in China, with Beijing set to host the 2022 Winter Olympics and Paralympics in February and March. And it's clear these questions about Peng Shuai aren't going away.
France's Champagne region has a shortage of their famous bubbles, causing restrictions in the run-up to Christmas. Retailers in Australia are rationing supplies, which is music to the ears of Australia's sparkling winemakers. The ABC's Clint Jasper reports.
Australians are consistently among the top per capita consumers of champagne. And for Melbourne importer Kyla Kirkpatrick, business has only increased over the last 2 years.
It's an interesting one, and you're right, we didn't have racing, we didn't have big events, we didn't have the Grand Prix, but we certainly saw champagne sales lift.
While globally champagne sales dropped in 2020, imports to Australia rose by 10%.
We certainly do see increases in affordable luxury items selling during times of economic crisis.
It happened after the global financial crisis in 2008, and it's happening again, except the product is harder to access.
So it's a cruel business at the moment.
At the start of this year, frosts wiped out between 30 and 40% of the crop. Sydney-based importer Mark Faber says that's created a global scramble for any stock the Champagne region's houses have to offer at the moment.
A lot of the big houses, some of the ones that are known for the most famous brands in the world, reacted a little bit too slowly, and they're finding that they are running out of stock.
Adding to that is higher freight costs caused by a shortage of shipping containers. customers.
Genuinely now, with the way logistics are, the global logistics, getting a container of wine from Champagne or from anywhere in Europe to Australia is pretty much a 3-month exercise.
A 12-bottle per person purchase limit on famous brands is the main way liquor retailers have responded to the shortage.
Let's get to some of your feedback now. A lot of it coming in on hostels, actually. This person says, today's cheap youth are tomorrow's big spenders. Shooting ourselves in the foot, Tony says, from Nelson. Richard's got in touch to say, YHA loss, I'm 57, used them all the time for work travel, will be sadly missed. Single room in Wellington waterfront, $90, unbeatable, Richard says. Very sad. Ruben's got in touch to say, I totally agree with your hostel owner guest. I'm only 22 and would hate the idea that people my age from around the world will be turned off from travelling here because of the minister's new strategy. It's such a bad look. I have several friends from Germany who've travelled here, or because I was able to affordably travel and get to know them in their country. This has multiple downsides and effects, and it's most definitely a short-sighted policy shift. All ages deserve to travel here. And John says, I travelled around New Zealand in March this year. I stayed at backpackers as it was the most affordable option for accommodation. Most were sadly empty during what should have been their peak time. Most backpackers and hostels also had to include local deals to get people to stay there. On DOC, so DOC is making it compulsory. You have to be double vaxxed to stay at their campgrounds or in their huts. This person says, if you're planning on going into the bush, relying on huts, unvaccinated, you are doubly irresponsible. Take a tent and gear. Please don't risk your hut mates or stress the rangers. That's John from Palmy. On the subject of travelling around unvaccinated, this person says, I'm happy for the unvaccinated to travel. I'm double vaxxed and hope that will protect me enough. We need to be careful that we don't become an apartheid country. The unvaxxed will be choosing to forfeit lots of privileges available to the rest of us. We need to maintain the right to choose. And this one from Sue says, I reckon no vax, no travel. I don't want the unvaxxed travelling as they're more likely to spread the virus. Somewhere 10 to 20 times more likely, according to my research. My preschool granddaughters are among the vulnerable, so my unvaxxed siblings are unwelcome until they're double jabbed. Thanks, Sue. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō. Tomorrow from 5 a.m. on First Up, they're live speaking to people and business owners all over Auckland as the city is finally freed from lockdown. Have a great evening.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The country's biggest music festival, a New Year Rhythm and Vines in Gisborne, has been postponed until Easter over COVID concerns. The government is defending allowing unvaccinated holidaymakers to go to Northland when the border around Auckland is lifted, despite iwi concerns. The Ministry of Health will be sending out a temporary exemption to the tens of thousands of people yet to receive their My Vaccine Pass. The Women's Tennis Association has suspended all tournaments in China over concerns about player Peng Shuai, who accused a top Communist Party official of sexual assault. Those are the